What if some of your so-called weird habits aren't weird at all? What if they're actually clues that your brain is doing something more advanced than most people realize? Psychologists have noticed something interesting over and over again. Some behaviors that look distracting, messy, or even lazy on the surface can actually be signs of sharp thinking. We're talking about strong self-control, deep curiosity, flexible problem solving, and creativity that doesn't always look neat from the outside. Today, we're breaking down 7 strange habits psychologists often associate with unusually sharp minds, plus a bonus 8th habit that might surprise you. Before we start, a quick reminder. None of these habits automatically means someone is a genius, and not having them doesn't mean you're not smart. These are patterns, not guarantees. But if you recognize a few of these, you might be seeing how an active mind behaves when it's processing the world in a deeper way. Let's start with the first habit. Talking to yourself. Talking to yourself has a reputation. People hear someone muttering under their breath and immediately assume something's wrong. But psychologists see self-talk very differently. In many cases, it's a thinking tool. When you talk to yourself, you're often doing 3 useful things at once. First, you're improving focus. Saying something like keys, wallet, phone turns a vague mental task into a clear checklist. Your attention becomes sharper because the task now has structure. Second, self-talk helps with self-regulation. That's the ability to manage emotions, impulses, and attention. A lot of high performers use self-talk to stay steady under pressure. They'll quietly coach themselves with phrases like, slow down, one step at a time, or stay with it. That kind of language keeps the brain organized when stress would otherwise take over. Third, talking out loud can improve problem solving. When thoughts stay trapped in your head, they can feel messy and unfinished. Putting them into words forces clarity. You hear gaps in your reasoning. You notice mistakes sooner. In a way, you become your own teacher, explaining the problem back to yourself until it makes sense. The key difference is how the self-talk sounds. Helpful self-talk is usually practical or supportive. Unhelpful self-talk is harsh and repetitive. A sharp mind isn't just talking to itself, it's using language to guide thinking. The second habit is constant curiosity. Curiosity isn't just liking random facts or trivia. In psychology, curiosity is more like an engine that drives learning. Curious minds don't stop at what happened, they move naturally toward why it happened and how it works. This habit shows up in a few powerful ways. Curious people tend to ask better questions. They want causes, patterns, and explanations, not just surface-level answers. They also connect ideas across different areas. Something they learn in one context suddenly links to something completely different, and that connection creates insight. Curiosity also makes thinking more flexible. When new information appears, a curious person is more willing to adjust their beliefs instead of defending them. That ability to update your mental model is a big part of strong reasoning. In short, curiosity isn't about collecting facts. It's about wanting to understand how things fit together. The third habit is letting your mind wander. Mind wandering usually gets labeled as poor focus, but the brain doesn't actually shut down when your attention drifts. In fact, a different system becomes active, one that handles reflection, imagination, and long-range thinking. This is why people often have insights while walking, showering, or lying in bed. When you stop forcing your attention onto one task, your brain keeps working quietly in the background. It reviews experiences, tests ideas, and connects information in new ways. That's where creative leaps often come from. The solution you couldn't find while staring at the problem suddenly appears when you step away. There is an important boundary, though. Mind wandering is useful when it leads to new perspectives or ideas. It becomes unhelpful when it turns into rumination, where the same worries loop over and over. A sharp mind isn't necessarily wandering more often, it's wandering in a way that eventually brings something useful back. The fourth habit is enjoying solitude. Some people recharge through constant interaction. Others recharge by being alone. Enjoying solitude doesn't mean disliking people. It usually means your brain values quiet space. Solitude reduces mental noise. Without interruptions, thoughts can develop in longer chains. You can follow complex ideas without losing them halfway through. You can also reflect more honestly because there's no social pressure shaping your responses. Time alone supports something psychologists call thinking about your thinking. You notice your habits, your biases, and your emotional reactions more clearly. That self-awareness helps with decision-making and emotional control. In a world that's always buzzing, being comfortable alone can protect the brain's ability to do deep, original thought. The fifth habit is creative chaos in your workspace. A messy desk is one of the most misunderstood signs on this list. Sometimes mess is just mess, but in other cases, a bit of disorder can support creative thinking. A perfectly tidy environment subtly signals order and rules. A slightly chaotic environment can signal experimentation and flexibility. For some people, visual clutter acts like an external memory system. Projects in progress stay visible. Ideas that aren't finished yet remain in sight instead of being hidden away. The key difference is whether the mess is functional. If clutter helps you think and keeps ideas accessible, it can support creativity. If it causes stress, lost items, or constant distraction, it becomes a problem. A sharp mind's chaos usually has a purpose, even if it doesn't look that way to others. The sixth habit is questioning assumptions. This habit often gets mistaken for being argumentative, but that's not what it's really about. Questioning assumptions usually happens internally first. A sharp mind doesn't just ask what it believes, it asks why it believes it. It checks whether an idea is based on evidence, habit, or convenience. It wonders what information might change its opinion. This habit supports critical thinking, better decisions, and emotional intelligence. Assumptions shape how we interpret events, judge people, and plan our future. Being willing to examine them keeps thinking flexible instead of rigid. There's a certain humility in this habit. Being able to say, "I might be wrong," creates room for learning. The seventh habit is having a strong sense of humor. Humor looks effortless, but it's actually mentally demanding. To understand a joke quickly, the brain has to recognize patterns, detect a twist, hold multiple meanings at once, and understand social context. All of that happens in seconds. Creating humor takes even more skill. Timing, word choice, and perspective shifts all have to line up. That kind of mental agility is often linked to flexible thinking and verbal intelligence. A strong sense of humor suggests a brain that can move quickly between ideas and see connections others might miss. It's problem solving, just delivered playfully. Now for the bonus eighth habit, procrastination. Procrastination usually gets a bad reputation, and for good reason. It can lead to stress, rushed work, and regret. But psychologists describe a version that looks very different. Some people delay starting not because they're avoiding the task, but because their ideas are still forming. Stepping away gives the brain time to process information in the background. This is sometimes called incubation, and it can improve creativity. Others resist finishing too early. They delay because they're still gathering information or refining their approach. For certain personalities, time pressure also triggers intense focus. A deadline flips a mental switch. The crucial difference is how it ends. Active procrastination still leads to action. Passive procrastination leads to avoidance and guilt. A sharp mind doesn't delay forever, it delays strategically, then commits fully. So, if you talk to yourself, stay endlessly curious, daydream at inconvenient times, enjoy being alone, thrive in a bit of creative mess, question assumptions, laugh quickly, and yes, sometimes procrastinate, those habits might not be random quirks. They may be signs your brain is constantly organizing, exploring, simulating, and reframing the world in ways that aren't always obvious from the outside. So now we're curious. Which of these habits do you recognize in yourself? Let us know in the comments.